Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Indian pharma industry performance for the month of April. Uh, so today we will be covering the following topics. We'll be looking at IPM therapy performance for the month. What are the different parameters that have driven the growth of the market? How the top 40 corporates and the top 40 brands have performed in this. And we have a very interesting session in the changing dynamics of the anti-infective therapy by Mr. Vimal Wahi, VP, by Mr. Vimal Wahi from Alembic Pharma. So before we go to the opinions that matter section, let's have a brief understanding of how the Indian pharma industry has performed for the month. Yes, for the month, the performance of the industry has been down. There has been a value degrowth as well, a little stronger unit degrowth for the industry. As we go through the presentation, we will delve upon what is it that is actually impacted. And if I were to look at the long-term trend, is it a concern? Is it not a concern in terms of this growth? The analysis that we have done is at a top level. Probably a deeper digging in the understanding the trend lines may be needed over a period of time, or we may have to wait and watch for another 3 months to see how the industry is going to evolve for the rest of the months. So if I were to look at how the different therapies have performed, majority of the top therapies have degrown, exceptions being the anti-infective therapy, the respiratory therapy, and the pain and analgesics therapy, which still continue to be on the positive track. Pain and analgesics therapy in terms of units has stagnated, but a high exception is the respiratory therapy, which continues to show a double-digit growth, both in terms of value as well as units. When it comes to anti-infective therapy, the growth for the month has relatively slowed down. It used to be showing a very robust growth month on month. This month, the growth has slowed down a little. Now, when we look at the growth drivers, we are looking at a value degrowth, we are looking at a unit degrowth. We try to dig a little deeper in terms of growth drivers of this therapy, the growth. So if you look for the month of April, it is the volume-driven growth which has gone down significantly. Whereas if you look at the new product-driven, price-driven growth, the new product-driven growth, both are on a positive track. It is the volumes. When we talk about volume, the demand genuinely has come down of the products which don't fall in the new introductions category. Same time last year, if you look at this graph, it was volumes which was down. Even the new introductions were down. Over here, this contribution of new introductions degrowth was more of the COVID products which had come down in terms of demand, where there were a lot of new introductions which happened for the molecules which were high in demand, and they started degrowing because the genuine demand for those products came down. However, if you look at this period, this new introduction growth is mainly contributed by many new introductions that have come in the anti-diabetes therapy, especially after some of the key molecules have lost their patent. But overall, if you look at the demand for the existing products which don't fall in the new introductions category, it has gone down. If I look at the growth drivers for the month of April, what we see is that volume-driven degrowth is quite pronounced for the month of April across all the key contributing therapies except the anti-infective therapy and the respiratory therapy. If I were to look at the picture for the MAT period, which is a cumulative or collective understanding of what happened in the past 1 year, if you see majority of the key or the top therapies, the growth is driven by price growth. It's a price growth, price-led growth. Whereas if we look at the anti-diabetes therapy, this part is an exception because of the branded generics which have come into the market after certain drugs losing their patent. We try to do analysis in two ways. One, we try to look at the MAT as well as month growth trend over the past 5 years. And we also try to look at how does the entire trend look for the key market for the last 60 months. Are we in line with the last 60 months trend? So let us first focus on the 5 MAT trend. So this is the MAT growth, value growth that the market has shown over a period of time. So if I look at the MAT growth trend, the growth really doesn't seem to be that much concern because cumulatively the market seems to have done well and the growth trends are more or less in line with what they should have been. This anti-infectives 2.5% growth may be a correction of, or is a correction of, the relatively higher growth that was seen same period last year. If I look at the month growth trend, however, if you see these therapies, some of the key therapies had shown a significant double-digit growth in the COVID times, and this growth got corrected in the April 22 month. However, there were certain therapies like derma which continued to grow significantly, and there is a slight amount of correction that has happened, because of which I see a degrowth. However, certain therapy areas like cardiac, gastro, anti-diabetes, and nutritionals degrowing even this year seem to be a little concern to me. It is possible. Now I can just talk about what numbers I'm seeing in the market. It is possible that there may be a stronger push that have happened in the market in the month of March, which may be coming down. But then I thought about looking at the long-term trends, the trends for the last 60 months, how the market has performed. What I have done is I have done this analysis for the IPM overall, as well as I have done it for the top 10 categories, in which we realize that there are certain categories where the demand or the unit uptake has been almost the same as it was in the pre-COVID times for the month of April, whereas in some categories there has been a growth. Now, if I were to look at the long-term IPM trends, even before describing the graph, I will just tell you what I have done. This blue line is the unit trend. The orange line is the value trend. And I have taken what happened same time in the month of April in pre-COVID times. Now, there may be drugs which had a seasonal uptake. There may be drugs which are chronic, but more or less, it is better that we compare the uptake month on month of the same months. So if I look at for the month of April, this was the unit consumption for the IPM, April 18. This is the consumption in April 19. Probably this period of COVID, the April consumptions may be aberrations that were seen because of COVID demand. But if I want to see for April 23, the demand is almost closer to what it was in the pre-COVID times. So the unit consumption for the month of April seems to be somewhere closer to the pre-COVID times and has not shown that much growth. However, if I were to look in the value trend, in terms of value for the overall IPM, if I compare the value of the IPM for April 18, April 19, and April 23, the value trend seems to have shown a significant pickup. And that's the reason why we keep on looking at what is majorly driving the growth of the market. It is the price-driven growth which is majorly driving the growth of the market today. We also try to look at some other factors which may be impacting growth, whether it is in pre-COVID times, there was not much of online pharmacy. Now online pharmacies may have come into picture. However, that component is relatively smaller, and that should not be responsible for this type of growth of the market. Then we look at the top therapies. A few are chronic and a few are acute therapies. So if I were to look at the cardiology segment, as compared to pre-COVID times, the consumption for the cardiology segment is more or less the same or has slightly declined over what it was in April 19. However, in terms of value, the market has grown well. The next segment is the number 2 segment, the anti-infective segment. In this segment, however, if you see as compared to the pre-COVID times, the consumption for the month of April 23 is relatively better or relatively more than what we had seen in April 19 and April 18 and April 19. And also we see a good value growth that we are seeing for the market. In case of gastro segment, if you see, there is a significant pickup. The market had actually gradually declined in the April 19. But if I were to look at the consumption today, we are slightly better than what we were in April 18 and April 19. In terms of value, the market has shown a good value growth. As far as the anti-diabetes segment is concerned, a little concern over here, especially because when we talk about anti-diabetes segment, the segment is showing a very good new introduction driven growth. Now, what this picture tells me is probably the demand or the actual consumption more or less remains the same or has slightly declined. But then what is happening within the anti-diabetes segment, it is just that the prescriptions or the drug consumption is moving from X category of drugs to the Y category, which has lost patent recently. In terms of value, however, if you look at the anti-diabetes segment, the segment has grown well. Next, coming to the nutritional segment over here, in COVID times, here it was around 17, and now it has come to 15. In COVID times, there was a strong aberration because of which the multivitamin preparations, zinc preparations, they picked up significantly for the immunity booster properties. But after vaccination, or majority of the population has got vaccinated, the demand has come down. And today for the month of April, the consumption for the month of April is much lesser than what it was in the pre-COVID times for the month of April. Coming to the respiratory segment, this segment had slightly declined in the month of April 19, but if you look at the April 23 consumption, it is much better than what it was in April 18 and 19, both in terms of unit trend as well as value trends. Coming to the pain and analgesic segment, this segment has shown an improvement. It was 18, 19, and today it is around, I would say, 20.9, or I would say 21. And even in terms of value, this market has grown well. In case of derma segment, however, I'm seeing a sharp decline, which is, it's come to around 90. From 10, it has come to around 90. In case of neuro-CNS segment, again, there is a sharp decline. From 11, it has come to around 10.8. And if I were to look at the gynec segment, in case of gynec segment, you will see from 359, 395, the value has moved to 505. However, if I were to look at the unit consumption, I'm also seeing a significant pickup in the unit consumption. So these were the 10 segments that we looked at for the how the IPM has performed. Next, we will be looking at the top 40 corporates, how the top 40 corporates have performed. Now, though there have been challenges in the market performance, what we are seeing is there are certain corporates which have done well: Mankind, Cipla, Macleods, and Aristo. These are a few corporates which have grown well in terms of value as well as units, despite the challenging market situation. If I were to look at the next 20 corporates, we see Alembic, Laranon, Apex. These are the three companies which continue to show a positive value as well as volume growth for the month of April. Then coming to the top 40 brands, for the month of April, Glycomed GP has moved to the #1 position, though in terms of units, it has shown a degrowth. In terms of value, it has shown a growth. Anti-infective market, the growth has slowed down. Probably that's the reason why even for Augmentin, we are seeing a slight slowdown of the growth. Now, despite the slowdown of the overall market, there are certain brands which continue to show a double-digit growth: Manforce, Foracort, Monosef, Calpol, and Budecort among the top 20 brands. And among the next 40 brands, it is Diolin, Rhizodec, Moxicine CV, Prega News, and Ecosprin, which have shown a double-digit value, or not a double-digit everywhere, but a positive value as well as unit growth for the month of April. Now, this was about how the market has performed. So if I were to talk about the key takeaways of the market performance, the market has shown a degrowth for the month of April 23. However, anti-infectives, respiratory, and pain segments are exceptions. Though new introductions and price-driven growth is positive, it is the volume growth which is pulling down the performance of the overall market. Unit consumption of a few top therapies is almost similar to pre-COVID times for the month of April 23, and this may be a concern which needs to be tracked, because this may be a one-time phenomena. We need to see how the market is evolving over a period of time, or look at how first half versus second half of the year looks at. Because India being the majority of the therapies are season-driven therapies, it is the second half of the year where the sale is relatively higher than the first half. Despite the challenges in growth for the month of April, a few companies among the top 40 have shown a positive value as well as unit growth. And Glycomed GP moves to the #1 position for the month of April. There are a few more brands among the top 40 which have also shown a positive value and unit growth despite the market challenges. Now, next we come to our section, the most interesting section, opinions that matter, wherein the topic for today is changing dynamics of the anti-infective therapy. Our speaker for today is Mr. Vimal Wahi, Vice President and Cluster Head Acute Therapy, Alembic Pharmaceuticals Limited.
Sir, how is Bombay treating you now?
Yeah, it's been close to a month now. Settled down. Alembic is a great organization to work, and I got my residence close to this place, so hardly takes me 20 minutes.
That's a boon.
Yeah,
Especially in Bombay.
Absolutely.
So I hope you settle down completely.
Absolutely, very well. The family is here. We're all set to go.
Nice. Sir, finding you here gives me an opportunity of asking you some questions which have been bothering me for quite some time.
Please go ahead, Richa.
Sir, anti-infective and respiratory therapy. Now, I'm just not able to understand what's going on with the therapies. Last 2-3 quarters, we see these are the two therapy areas that are driving the entire market, especially with the robust double-digit growth. Why?
I think we'll need to reflect back and go into history around 18 months back, Richa. If you look at, the last year, we feel that the markets had degrown in the first 2 quarters, but that was not a degrowth. It was correction of the exorbitant growth that these anti-infectives saw way back in 2021 when COVID hit us. Right? The usage of anti-infectives was multiplied. Those brands which were available and really benefited, and it's to that period when we see there was that degrowth. Now similarly, past 4-5 months, there are two reasons. Number one, as compared to the base that we had in the last year, where January was the last COVID month and there were huge stocks piled up at the stockists that continued for a couple of quarters rather. That's the reason the degrowth was observed. Now to that base, when you see a usage, you're seeing a healthy growth. Moreover, in the past 2-3 months, if you look at the kind of fever that's coming in, they term it as acute febrile illness or the viral fevers, they need actually more than one antibiotic. Rather, most of us have to take at least 2 antibiotics, not for 5 days, even for 10-12 days. And that's giving the treatment. I think most of the pharma industry people, all of us, could not calibrate in the last financial year what would happen to the anti-infective.
Right.
And because the high closing stock and the usage that people had earlier, first few months was a lull. However, all said and done, I can only tell you that at least top 5 brands of each anti-infective in the RPM, right, have benefited during the COVID period. The prescriber base has expanded, and most of the organizations had this opportunity to engage with those doctors and give them more reasons to prescribe an anti-infective. Yeah? That's one of the reasons, and I think the top 2-3 brands which have actually gained in the last 1 year have consciously worked on demand generation. They worked on creating or educating the doctors on the newer indications. And I think any company which worked on both the engines, which is demand generation and demand fulfillment, has benefited. That's for sure.
Does this also mean that companies have very consciously started meeting GPs and educating them on the usage of antibiotics?
Absolutely. I think a lot of credit that I give to the condition of India during the COVID period is to GPs and also to maybe the retailers here. Okay. I think during COVID period, as compared to the other countries in the Western world, why we didn't have as many casualties, because I think the IMA, API and all the state bodies also worked on educating one of the treatment, regime to the GPs as well as to the retailers. And that's how most of us benefited.
Right. So does this also mean the adherence to therapy is now being corrected?
Could be. And also could be that the GPs are becoming more educated in terms of the usage, and bodies like AP and IMA have created guidelines on the treatment of febrile illness, on the treatment of various other therapy areas, and that is helping us educate. You're right.
Right. So thank you. This insight really helps me. Let me take you through our office, give you a guided tour on how we have set up ourselves.
Sure, it's
Please
all
come.
yours. Yeah, Richa, a wonderful office.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, you have seen this industry evolve in the various functions that you have worked with the organizations. You have seen how the marketing strategies have changed for the companies. We see a lot of companies now moving towards pricing penetration strategy. They want to bring in prices as low as possible. What are your thoughts on this? And then I'll add why am I asking this question to you.
Sure, you can do that, but I don't know. My experience has been that price is not the sole differentiator ever. However, all said and done, at least for chronic therapies, it may matter, right? Because today, with the e-commerce websites coming in, the patients and the doctors have to be, so the doctors have to be a little careful because the patients have become smarter. They can actually check what product is being prescribed to them. Google is the world. E-commerce websites tell them which is a cheaper option and the other things. But still, I think for healthcare, people are ready to spend a decent amount. And I think, like you rightly said, in today's world, there are no major differences in the strategy. All the strategies are copied by most of the companies in the next few weeks, not to talk about months, right? And yeah, price is important, but neither can you be an outlier in terms of being very expensive, right? Because of what I was talking about. And nor do people want to be perceived as very cheap, right? So you have to be in that price band, which you call as the average price band. And even when it comes to new products that come in, I think it's a matter of a few weeks or the months. You see all the top 20 companies joining the bandwagon. Any gliptin that you've seen in the past or any new product that has come in any therapy, right? So prices, more or less, that I'm seeing are in that price band, right? When it comes to the doctor, I think doctors have also realized that it's the right quality for their patient which matters. Doctors have also realized that companies which bring in maybe patient-centric activities and, of course, have the reputation of a quality product are the ones which are going to benefit.
Right, right.
But you're telling me something else.
So my reason of asking this question was that if I am decreasing my price, I'm getting into a penetrative pricing strategy. I am in a way eroding my profits. My bottom lines are getting impacted. How am I going to take care of the expenses that the fixed expenses that I have as a company? The medical reps need their increments. The expenses in terms of the DAs are going up. How do I take care of all those things and still be profitable?
So like I told you, maybe it's something to do with, if you're talking about the P&L and the profitability, the organizations have also realized that there are various means of, trying to curb the other expenses which can be reduced. Similarly, on the API cost, during COVID, the API costs had shot up. I think now the API costs of most of the products are stabilizing. There are wastages which organizations are realizing and trying to correct, right? However, it's that patient centricity which importantly is the piece and we need to look at. Similarly, when it comes to marketing expenses as well, I think most of us are now utilizing our expenses on engaging with the doctors and helping them treat their patient in a better way, engage with their patient to give him a better lifestyle. And hence, the expenses of marketing are becoming more rational.
This, sir, also makes me think about how are we getting impacted as an industry by the regulation the government is bringing in.
The regulations, you mean to say, acts like 194R
Exactly.
or the others?
Yes.
All right. So I can only tell you that I think I'm very happy about that the regulatory bodies have started aping the West. Right? So the quality controls in terms of even the products that are being approved and the acts that are coming in are making the industry and the HCPs more conscious about the ways and means how we operate. So 194R again is a boon for those organizations who were already working on maybe having patient-centric activities. Over the years, the HCPs and the industry both have observed that the only differentiator going forward is going to be the right quality, right engagement activities, and your people. So the
Right.
more you work on people capabilities, the more you work on better interaction with your customers, the better will be your long-term perspectives. So I think very happy about the regulatory bodies bringing in something like this.
Right. Will this also help us getting into extra urban markets more easily?
Extra urban, I think way back in early 2000s, there were maybe the McKinseys of the world who were coming and saying the gold mine lies in the bottom of the pyramid. I think this is the time many organizations experimented, failed, retried, and are now trying to once again get onto the bottom of the pyramid. Yes, in extra urban also, with digitalization improving, they are also coming more closer to what is happening in the metros and the semi-metros. There are doctors who are understanding. There are those hub chemists which are also helping in better patient treatment profiles. And hence, yes, I think most of the top 20 companies are now getting into the extra urban way. And that may be one of the growth drivers in the industry in the next couple of years.
Right. So thank you so much. This has truly helped me answer a few of the questions that I had for a few months now. And I'm sure under your able guidance, Alembic will certainly be doing extremely well. Thank you so much, sir. Also, thank you to our audience for joining us today morning. Have a lovely day ahead.